Good news you can use with Deborah Horn, yeah. She got the good news you can use. Good news you can use for your life.
Hello, and welcome to the 2021 first conversation about racism in America. We ended last year with a bang, and we're going to be starting out with another bang as we move forward in 2021. So, before we get started, because we have a lot to discuss, let me introduce the panel to you, and we will start with Terry.
Teresa Terry Lucas Washington from Bakersfield, California, originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I met Beverly at Ohio University, and I am a retired law enforcement officer.
Perfect. Amanda?
Hi, I'm Amanda Guimon, and I live in Kingsport, Tennessee. And I met Beverly when I used to live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we worked together there. And I am excited about talking about the topic that we have to discuss today.
Melody?
Hello, I am Melody Scarborough, and I am from Durham, North Carolina. And I met Beverly through her grandson and my son's playing sports. And she's also my sorority sister. And I am happy to be here again for kicking off 2021.
Awesome. Deb?
I'm Jeb Buffington, originally from Rockport, Maine. I live in North Carolina now by way of Paris, France. And I know Beverly through a mutual connection that a lot of us have, Mike Lowry.
Bruce?
Hello, everyone. I'm Bruce Dunn from Daytona Beach, Florida, originally from Brooklyn, New York. And I met Beverly while we were all in college at Ohio University. I'm living in Daytona Beach, Florida as a high school teacher of digital video technology and a freelancer with the networks.
Thanks. Gary?
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy New Year. Well, my name is Gary Jones. I am from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, by way of Goldsboro, North Carolina. I've met Beverly actually on Twitter. We've been friends ever since then.
Brooks?
Aloha kako. I'm Brooks Bays. I live in Honolulu. My family's from Texas. I turn my accent on every once in a while. And I'm a technical and scientific illustrator at the University of Hawaii. And I'm also met Beverly through our friend Mike. And mahalo piha to him for that.
And last but not least, Jean?
Hi, everybody. Again, it's great to see you again. It's been a while. I'm thrilled to be back. I'm Jean. I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I've lived in many places across the United States. And I met Beverly through the nonprofit that I work with, and her son was involved. So I met her son and her grandson, and her daughter, and met her through that.
And he's like my son too, so yes.
Yes.
A Freudian slip, but not really. All right. Well, welcome everyone to this particular episode of having a conversation about racism. Obviously, none of us are disappointed about the outcome of the election. We are all in agreement of that. We are all very happy about that. But I would like to know how 74 million people still believed that Donald Trump was an effective enough president to get a second term. Who wants to start this conversation? Please. Bruce.
Well, I have a lot of Republican friends, and the reason for the craziness, and they didn't understand it until he lost, was that they weren't fans of Donald Trump. They were Republican fans, understanding that Trump was pushing the Republican agenda. So they went along with him because it was the Republican agenda that they wanted to see go forward. And that's why they were able to, in their minds, dismiss what he said, because they didn't believe that he would do the things that he did. And even if he did, the Republicans would keep him in check. Obviously, that didn't turn out the way they thought.
Okay, so you're saying 74 million people who were Republicans, and there were probably some independents who may have voted for him as well, all
And some
believed,
Democrats, too.
and Democrats all believed in the agenda that he was pushing for the Republican Party. Is that what you all believe?
Pretty much. I think it boils down to talking to my Republican friends. It's opposition to abortion and packing the courts with judges who will oppose abortion. When it boils down to, I mean, they think he's disgusting, they think he's horrible, but they oppose abortion more than anything else. And so they don't think he's a good president. They don't think he's an effective president, except on that one issue. And it's hard for us to imagine how much they dislike the idea of an active government. We want the government to help. We want the government to fix problems that exist. They don't want that. They want, I don't know who they want to fix them, or they deny that they exist, or they want somehow magically big business will fix problems, but they don't recognize problems that we recognize. And so they don't think they need to be fixed. Racism isn't a problem. The climate isn't a problem. Inequity in the economics is not a problem. None of these things are real problems. So we don't need a good president to fix things that aren't real problems.
Jeb?
Yeah, I have to disagree a little bit with my friend Bruce. I think that might explain why Republicans got behind Trump 4 years ago. But after 4 years of performance, I think there are plenty of folks that what Bruce is saying is true for. That they're Republicans. They would never vote for a Democratic agenda, even if they don't like the performance of Trump. So I think that's true for some people. I think that I'm afraid that there's a larger group or a large group that's motivated by the kind of hateful rhetoric and racism that Trump kept hinting around, and touching on, and then he'd back off when he got in trouble, but then he'd bring it back up again. I think there were a lot of dog whistles there that Trump used on purpose. And I think a lot of white Americans are really scared about sharing this country with people of color. And that's the movement. That's what's happening. No matter what Trump says, that's where we're going. But they're scared. And so a guy like Trump that would appeal to that fear attracted a lot of votes, I think. And those are votes that would put up with anything, including an attempted overthrow of the election, if it meant they didn't have to share, because they feel like they're going to have less if they share.
So let me ask you this question, Amanda, because you live in the South and you live in a rural part of the South. Is that what you're hearing? That, they're afraid to share power? They're afraid that Black people will get what they rightly deserve? What are you hearing? What are your friends and foes saying?
My friends are driving me crazy because I see their posts and I'm like, what is wrong with you? But they are saying that they voted for Trump because he's not a politician and that he's done so much for America. He built the wall. He was against abortion. He did all these things that, during his presidency that no other president's ever done. And they drank the Kool-Aid. I mean, I just don't understand how they just don't see how much, I guess, divide he has put in America. But they're just like, he's the greatest president ever. I'm just like, what is wrong with you? But they are mainly they voted. There are some that don't agree with things that he has done, but they say that he has, like, boosted the economy, and like he caused the prices of gas and all this to go down. They don't look at the big picture and see everything. They just, and I think some of them read the headlines, but not the depth of the articles. Because I find myself saying, "Did you actually read this? Did you actually read what this is saying? You have to read the whole article, not just the headline." But they voted for him because he is not a politician, and they just think he's the greatest thing in the world. And I'm just sitting over here like, what?
Okay, so Gary, as the therapist in this group, how do we psychoanalyze these people? I mean, where are they? Are they really on the fringes of psychosis behavior, or are they normal? What's going on here?
Okay, so I will begin by saying that we can't, you can't put all of Trump's supporters into one basket. You can't do that. So I would say that there are a lot of them that really are probably fringe on the fringe. But the other part of it is he Trump was able to speak and say what they wanted to hear, what they deep down believed. I mean, whether or not we want to admit it, Trump charisma takes you along, can take you far, and Trump was very charismatic or charismatic, I should say. Was he good at being charismatic? It's going to determine who you talk to. But when people are longing to hear something, when they're longing to believe something, when they're longing for someone to validate what they feel is real, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people tend to go towards that person or that group that will validate whatever they're thinking and whatever they're feeling. And I think that's what we saw throughout the 4 years of Trump being in office.
So, to the extent that they would storm the Capitol on January 6th
Mm-hmm.
in an attempt to overthrow the government because Donald Trump spoke to them, is that what you're saying? They would go to that extreme.
I mean, in a sense, in the essence that they believed what he said. So first of all, I think you kind of have to back up and look at it from the point that these are thoughts that people were believing anyway. So Donald Trump did not create, and he created this atmosphere, but it was also an atmosphere that was sort of laying dormant and waiting to occur. So you get a person like Donald Trump who's able to stir the masses, who knows how to stir the masses. I don't think he's a great president, but he knows how to stir masses, especially those who believe him. And when you get, once again, when you believe something so strongly, you will act on it. So, with that being said, in terms of mental health, think about what happens. You have a mental health patient, and they will act on things. They will present with behaviors that you and I know are not realistic, are not based in reality at all, but they believe it. So I'm not going to say that everybody was crazy, but we act on the things that we believe in, the things that mean something to us. And Donald Trump recognized that there was a lot of people that are discontented, felt, upset that the government wasn't going in the direction that they wanted to go. So yes, they presented some behaviors that we could call very extreme, and maybe some mental health diagnoses as well. To be honest with you, but that's the way I would call it, God.
All right. And I'm going to briefly interject something here. I received an email after the insurrection from a guy who, pitches public speaking and, tries to get you to buy his business, model. And the headline was Donald Trump is an expert public speaker. And I looked at it, I said, what? But he said what you said. Donald Trump had the charisma to be able to motivate that group that was saying he was saying what they wanted to hear, and as a result, they were more than willing to follow him and to do whatever he said. And the guy was saying that that was the making of a superb public speaker and that we should all be like Donald Trump. Anyway.
Yeah, I want to make sure, I want to clarify something. I want to make sure that everybody knows that. I hope everyone understands. I don't think Donald Trump is a great speaker. I think that's very clear. But he is, he's very charismatic. And think
Well, he
about
knew
it.
how to speak to them.
Yes.
Now, we don't think that he can speak well at all, but he knew how to communicate with them effectively
Yes, yes.
based on their level of education. All right, I got you. All right, so let's move on to January 6th. So, Terry, let me start with you on this. Okay, so you're sitting at home. I'm assuming you're watching TV, or maybe you weren't watching TV and all of a
I
sudden.
was watching.
Okay. What was your initial reaction?
My initial reaction was that I could not believe this was actually going on. Two reasons. Being a retired law enforcement person, I know how the half of that block is. Half of it is actually right wing. Even where I worked, it's always, it will always be. And I worked 30 years in law enforcement. And you would have thought that it would have changed over that 30-year time period, but it did not. And that is the reason why you had the response. And all I could think of as I was looking at this is, oh my God, they let this happen because they wanted to do, the people that was in charge in power, even over that law enforcement, they wanted this to happen. They wanted them to succeed. They did not, thankfully. But that was my very first thought. Okay, I'm looking at the police presence and they knew this was coming and they wanted this to happen.
Wow.
And
So
did not want to send anybody in.
were you surprised at the number of former law enforcement officers who were a part of the actual riot?
No, not at all. It's actually expected because they're that way on the job. And they generally don't make it a secret. They're that way on the job. So when they retire, and especially with having a president like Donald Trump that's feeding them everything that they want to hear. You know, just like that young lady says, they would just as soon tear this country down than share it. Make sure there is none. And this is how even all of these retired law enforcement and military, because you have to remember that law enforcement is paramilitary. So the mindset is the same. And when you get people that's on that crust of right wing or even in the middle, all view it that way. I mean, I have plenty of retired law enforcement. You know, most of them I have since gotten rid of on my Facebook, but I am also one of those type of people to where I will keep my friends close and my enemies closer, because the same way I would look at Fox News, because I want to see what it is that they're saying and why it's so appealing to these people. I mean, I don't live in a bubble and I want to be able to see all this. Now, I wanted to see them count to certify the vote. So that's what I was looking at when all of this took place. And I was not shocked and I was not surprised, even with the way that the law enforcement was armed. They did not shoot one shot. They just as soon get beaten to death than shoot one of their own, because this is really how they look at it. We already know how it would have been if it was BLM.
Exactly.
I mean, everybody already knows.
Exactly.
But just the extremes that they would go through to protect their own, whether or not they believe the same thing or not, was no shock to me at all.
Let me ask you this, Melody, because I'll tell you, the first time I saw a black face in the crowd, I was like, "What? What is? No, are you serious?" It just blew me away. And then the organizer was of someone of color, a young black man, or maybe he wasn't black, like Black American, but. Were you shocked when you saw the black people who were there? What did you think of it all?
Well, first off, the whole reason for them being there, Black people, basically what they were saying was our votes didn't count. And they were trying to find a way to disqualify them because the places where they had an issue with were the places where the majority of us voted. So that was the underlying what they were saying. And they kept saying, well, you're going to make people mad because, it was voter fraud. Well, what about the people who we know that we voted and it was not voter fraud? We're mad too because you're trying to discount our votes. What happened, Black people were not so much surprised about what happened. We were disappointed in how the whole issue was treated versus the Black Lives Matter protest that we saw over the summer that they want to compare that to. And a prime example is over the summer, we saw on TV peaceful protesting. There were some people that got out of hand. Those are not people that we are condoning what they did. But we saw on TV a Black CNN reporter get arrested while he was trying to do his job because he was out there. Then we also see all of those evil white people beating on the windows and the doors, tearing up the windows right there in the police's face, and they do nothing. And it's like, how can you be so fearful of us and we're being peaceful and these people are like being evil and doing bad things right there in your face and you're not afraid of that? So it was more of, we were just disappointed, but it was also a moment for us to say, we told you so. And we've been telling you this for years about how we're being treated. Also not surprised about the police being part of those people, the evil people. And that's part of why these issues have been going on for so long and have not been getting addressed appropriately, because part of the people to address them are part of it. There's no reason why the FBI should not have already been all over this and all in those people's lives and investigating them and stopping this before it even started. Look at the Black Panthers. Look at any organization that's to support Black people for equality and rights. They get in it and they destroy it. But these organizations, hate organizations, have been going on for years. And like I said, I know someone that is in law enforcement, and I talked to them about it, and it was, well, we can't do anything until they actually do something. They're just talking. Well, they showed us on January the 6th that they will do what they have been talking about. And like I told him, by the time they do it, it's too late. You need to address this beforehand. So I'm sorry I kind of rambled all over the place, but I'm just a little passionate about this whole thing. And then for them to say that Donald Trump had nothing to do with it and what he said did not incite or instigate the matter. Well, you can't say that rappers and rap music cause people to do bad things and then say that what he said did not cause those people to do bad things. It just doesn't match up. So I hope that they do what they need to do to address this. I hope that the people in politics really see what happened, the ones that are right now still condoning what he did and on the side of this was right, because stuff like this will continue to happen if we don't get it addressed appropriately. Okay. And I think the bigger picture is with him that they just want to keep him from being able to be in that position again. So.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to move on here. And let me ask you, Jean, as a white woman on January 6th, what were your thoughts?
Gosh, I was shocked. I hadn't seen it. My son called me and said, "Mom, they're storming the Capitol. We're breaking through the Capitol." But I was driving. I couldn't see it. So I watched on the news and it was just stunning. I think the image that got me was how many white faces there were and how angry the white faces were. They were so angry. And I put the blame not just on Trump, but on the congressional leaders who were twisting the truth. And I don't think enough responsibility has been put on to those congressional representatives who were at that very moment in Congress saying that, the election's been stolen from us and we need to invalidate all these votes and so on and so forth. We don't put enough blame on Mitch McConnell. We're not putting enough blame on both the Senate and the House. It was just staggering that it had come to this, and that so many white people felt so disenfranchised that they would do this. I still am having trouble understanding what they feel disenfranchised about, but they did. They were so angry. So it was a shock to me.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. Michael, thank you for joining us here. Let me ask you, because I did ask, I think, Melody, the same question. Were you surprised to see black faces at the riots doing and behaving badly just like their white counterparts? Or did you see any black people? Because I did see some.
Well, I saw him, and I wasn't surprised because I knew, uh, just like anything else, as my dad said, you can always find one. But uh, I was disappointed because uh, it just it's oxymoronic, first of all, and what I saw on the Capitol. Uh, I was expecting something like this. I was expecting that they were going to do what they were going to do. Trump did call them there. They had it planned. The media knew. Everybody knew. The FBI knew. They all knew it was going to happen, and it was all ignored or played down. I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that the United States exposed itself to the world as a racist place. And the duality in the justice system is not just talk, it's real. It's just real. That proved it. Everything that Black people had said about, I'm just going to go there, everything that Black people had said, or not just Black people, people that knew. The New York Times told you who Trump was at least 3 years before he ever ran. Everything that people that were in the know and that cared and had a heart and want to see us become a better country knew. We all knew that this was going to happen, or this is where they were headed. And they're not through. They're not through. But we all knew this was where they were headed because you let a demagogue become president. And I am convinced he never won president in the first place. And just these actions alone prove that he thought, I got away with it one time, I can do it again.
Okay, all right. So you raised up something that I do want to ask the rest of you all about. Do you see that was January 6th just the beginning, or do you think that this has been nipped in the bud? What do you think, Bruce? Are we headed towards a race war?
I think people use that term race war. They don't understand what a war really means. And if we get into a civil war again in this country, we're still in one, but it's a quiet one. It's a non-violent civil war. We get into a race war again, it's going to get to a point where everybody dies. People will be killing people just because. You ever seen the movie The Purge? Check it out. That's what it will become. A race war will become The Purge. Those that survival of the fittest, those that can survive will survive, those that can't won't. Will it happen? I don't think so. Because once we get to that point, the mentality is no one's going to survive. You're going to die. I'm going to die. So we're all ready to die. That's the point. If you're not ready to die, you're not going to go there. If you're ready to die, you can say, oh, I'm ready to die for this country. Really? Well, then you're killing each other if you're ready to die for this country. I don't think we'll get to that point. There are going to be people that are going to try to push it to that point. But I think what's going to happen is those people are going to be taken out quietly. This country knows how to remove a threat without telling you they're going to remove a threat.
Okay. Let me ask you, Amanda, do you see it coming to that? I mean, based on, the little rumblings you see in your own little community of whiteness?
Well, I would like to hope not, but I seen where Donald Trump said he's going to make a third party called the Patriots, and how people are on this bandwagon or will, I don't know, do anything he basically says. So I kind of worry about where things are heading, because they are just so, like, it's just, they'll do anything to follow him. And I mean, they say that the votes were rigged, and that he should have won, and blah blah blah, and that they're all about their guns, and they're taking away our gun rights, they're taking away our rights, they're taking away this and that. And it's just, I think if it gets a lot of momentum going, and he keeps feeding into this momentum, then something else it's not over. I don't think. I'd like to say it was, but I honestly don't think it is, because they are just so, like, blindsided and have no idea what they're into.
So if Joe,
I just want to say one thing real quick.
Mhm.
In the fact that Donald Trump has become the poster man for all of this stoking of hate, in essence, he's become the leader. In our country, every time a leader evolves, usually they get taken out. And if he really gets to the point where he's trying that, the other side, the people that don't want it, will go after him. They will go after those types of individuals, and they will take them out. They've done it to every black leader. What makes you think they won't do it to white leaders?
Well, David Duke is still running around, and he probably should have been
He's
taken out a long
quiet, though.
time ago.
Quiet. That's exactly it. He's quiet. The quiet ones can work. They'll be watched. But when you are loud, outspoken, looking for a platform, looking for social media, looking for TV, trying to create your own network, trying to get a whole party started, that will quietly be taken out. And you'll hear about it, but you won't know how it happened.
Okay,
And then
I'll buy that.
Beverly, can I say something right quick?
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
I'll be brief.
Please.
Okay. The bottom line is this: every time there's been any racial progress in the United States, it's been followed historically. It's been followed by this kind of backlash. And the other thing we have to remember is the Republican Party is a minority party. And that's what the problem is. It's a minority problem. But we don't need to lose sight that the Republican Party is a minority party. And it's that's what they want to do. They want us to confuse us and get us to thinking, but they really don't have the power to do that. All we have to do is keep voting and keep doing what's right, and we will defeat the evil. It's just that simple.
Okay. Brooks, you wanted to say something?
Just George Wallace leapt to mind when he said, the white guy who got too loud and ended up getting shot, and then kind of backtracked a lot and spent the trying to undo some of the damage, trying, but I don't know that Trump's going to get shot. I hope he doesn't. because it'll just incite his followers. But he's the apotheosis of republicanism at this point. They have been working towards him for decades, and now they've gotten what they want, and they don't know what to do with it. So I think there's a really good chance that it will split the Republican Party, which would be fantastic. At which point they'll have school boards and a couple of governorships, and then that'll be it. Because they peel off that half the Republican Party that wants to follow Trump, then they're a permanent minority, permanently out of power when that happens. Okay. Unless they really try and have a revolution, I don't think that they would be successful.
All right, so Gary, and then Jeb, I want to ask you both this question. So is President Biden the great white hope for America?
I mean, I don't think so, but I think that it's a definite change from where we were going at in the last 4 years. I really truly don't believe that there is a great white hope. I don't think there's a great black hope. I really don't see it that way. The way I see it is that, do we have a person that's going to be strong enough, who will have the ability enough and will be moderate enough to be able to sort of begin to combine all those loose forces out there, people who want peace as opposed to war, I guess, is what we've been talking about. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Joe Biden comes with his own set of issues. So let's just be honest. He does come with his own set of issues. And I think the bigger thing for Biden will be whether or not he can keep his own party united. The problem with the Democratic Party is that historically, when they get control of both the House and the Senate, and when they have the White House, they don't normally stay united, and they often fall apart. So I think that's going to be the bigger issue for Biden. Can he unite all of the elements of his own party, and those elements of the Republican Party that are willing to make some sort of change? That's what I think we need. I think that's the question, the thing that we need to see. And can he do that? I mean, I guess we'll see within the first year or so.
Okay. All right, Jeb, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I agree with Gary. I don't think the Great White Hope is even a question. Sorry, but I think it's great. I mean, I'm very happy. Obviously, I wanted to pick up on something that Teresa had said, or I'm sorry, Terry. I think Teresa goes by, which was certainly was complicity in the riots on the police side, and there was suppression of getting any relief in there from the federal side, which administers, Washington D.C. Sorry about the dog. Shush. Sorry. They're outside now. But there were also heroes. I mean, the gentleman that they're going to give the the congressional medal to, the gold medal, who led the rioters away. There are some real heroes like that too. So that it wasn't everybody. Not everybody was in on the deal, and they did win.
Let me clarify that it was not everybody, but it was too many.
Yeah,
and even
agreed.
If they weren't on that side, they still did not do the same type job that they would have done had it been people of color. Those weapons would not have stayed holstered. Trust and believe that.
Well, they did shoot one lady, remember? Somebody
one.
Got shot. One, yeah. And it certainly would have been more if it had been Beeline. So,
but here's the thing about that, Jeb. That woman got shot because she was an aggressor. She was trying to climb through to get into the chambers. black people just walking down the streets doing nothing
Right.
but
Right.
protesting peacefully were
I know.
shot for
I
no
know.
reason. I think that's the
I
difference
know.
we're saying.
Hmm.
I know. No, I totally agree. I think, I forget if it was Michael or Bruce said, there are two systems in this country of justice. It's without a doubt. It's totally unfair. I think, I honestly believe that what happened on the 6th was the high watermark of racism for this generation. Michael's saying, every time we make progress, there's a backlash. That's absolutely true. But I think this scared a lot of people. It split the Republican Party. Watch the money. Watch the money. Where the money is coming in, it's going away from Trump. They're stripping Trump of his money. The Republican donors are backing off or pulling away. I think we've seen the high watermark of this generation for this kind of militant racism. It'll quietly go back undercover. Those militias will go back out. And those fat boys with their guns and their beers will practice on the weekends, but we won't hear about it so much anymore. It'll go back undercover, and we'll make some progress with Biden. He's not the ultimate solution. Nobody is, but we'll make some progress.
If I could say one,
Go ahead, Gary.
I just want to say, I think one thing that we probably should begin to be on the lookout for, though, is who's going to succeed Trump in this ideology. And think about that closely, because the ideology doesn't die just because he goes away. The reality is that Trump has a lot of legal issues ahead pressing him, New York and some other places. So the reality is that he may not be able to make a comeback at all. But is there going to be someone that's going to be able to follow in his footsteps, or that's going to be able to do and to say almost on the same level that he's been able to say, if not the same level, somewhere close? So I think that we can keep our eyes on Trump, but the reality is there's somebody else that can follow behind him and keep this force sort of going.
But I think what Gene brought up earlier was the fact that we're not paying enough attention to the Mitch McConnells, to the Josh Hawleys, to the Ted Cruzes, to that Rick Rubio, who, anyway. So we're not paying enough attention to them because they have been the instigators who have been the driving force behind Trump. So if Trump is moved out of the picture, any one of them can step up and carry on that ideology. So, we need to be mindful of that. Let me ask you, Melody, because you have children who are old enough to have seen what went down, may have had questions. Did you talk to them about it? What did you say, if you did at all?
Well, those of you who are Facebook friends with me know that my oldest son, who is 15, is very involved in politics. So he actually had quite thoughtful insight and a lot to say about what happened. He understands that it wasn't right, and he just wishes that people would make a change. So they understood what happened, and just hoping that maybe their generation, the generation after them, will continue to make things better so that we can all get to a better place.
Okay, thanks.
Beverly, could I jump in for a minute?
Yes, absolutely.
I just wanted to go back to the comment about race wars, and I remain a committed optimist, and I feel like that the thing that gives me so much hope that there will not be, and that our country is changing, is that the single largest racial group in America, the racial group in America that is growing the most, is biracial marriages of every different race, and that by 2040 we will no longer be a white country, a predominantly white country. So it's 20 years away. We're well on the way. Some people say it will happen before then. And when you have people of different races in your family, it changes you. And Republican or not Republican, people, this trend will continue. And it will change those families, even the most die-hard families, because they now have Hispanics, Asian, African Americans in their families. The other thing I want to say is that gives me hope is that I heard the commentary about Joe Biden's speech, that it was the first time in American history that a president has said the words white supremacy
Right.
on his inauguration speech. And it's never been said before, never been acknowledged, never said. And that his first orders is in the 2 days of executive order and treating it for the first time as domestic terrorism and calling it domestic terrorism. So that both of those things give me great hope. I think there will always be these extremists, white supremacists. But I do hope that as the power of the government starts calling these people what they are, which is terrorists, and as more and more families are accept people of other races, we do have a better future ahead of us.
Okay, so thank you for that, Gene. That you have to be optimistic because if you're pessimistic and you look at the negative all the time, that's all you'll ever see. So I do want to remain optimistic. But here's my challenge, and when COVID is no longer around, and we haven't even dealt with COVID, but when COVID is no longer around, when I step out in public and I walk down the street or in the grocery store or department store and I look at white people, I'm not going to look at them the same. I mean, I'm just going to be real. I'm not going to look at them the same. Now, I'll see you and I know your hearts. At least I hope I do. But that is my challenge because there are 74 million people out there that voted for Trump for one reason or another.
That's right.
And I don't know if my next door neighbor is one of those 74 million. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Bruce?
Well, I'm in the red state, Florida. To the right, Trump supporter, know him well, firearms to the teeth, a member of the gaming commission. So he's connected, knows everybody in the South Daytona police. To the left of me, Biden flags flying. My entire neighborhood is mixed with both. I've been in this community for 25 years, 2 black families. That's it. I have never stopped looking at others differently because I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. We grew up during the civil rights movement. I was taught how to survive in a white society. Well, that never changed for me. Regardless of my success, regardless of the things that I've achieved, I'm always doing it with one eye, looking back and around, making sure. Because no matter how successful I become, the only thing that makes me, and this is my personal opinion, is the only thing that helps me become accepted is the economics. And if I wasn't at a certain level of economics, I'm not accepted.
I agree with that totally.
And
100%.
that's where I am, and that's how I live. And when I spoke to my church congregation a year ago, April, during the George Floyd, and nobody could understand why, and I challenged them and said, how many of you have invited me, my wife, or children, and I've been a member of this church since 2005, to dinner? That scared them. They had never thought about that. I said, you never think, you learn about every other culture and you want to go to different countries and learn about their customs, but you got people right here in your congregation and you don't know anything about their lives and how they live.
That is very true. Thanks for that, Bruce. Time is winding down, so I want to make sure I get everybody in here. Melody?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I got into what Bruce was saying.
It wasn't really a question. I was just talking about, once COVID is over, walking down the street looking at white people differently, and he was just saying that he's never looked at them any differently. So, what are your thoughts about that?
I will say, as of January the 6th, I went out probably the next day, and there were a lot of white men that I saw, and I just felt so like every one of them, I was, especially ones with the beards, and I'm like, were you in DC yesterday? Like and some of them, it may have just been me, but some of them I felt like they would look down on the ground when they saw me coming, like almost like they were embarrassed about what happened. So to sum it all up, we'll continue to work on that because of people like Brooks and Jeb that are in our group that I've been communicating with, and we're building this virtual relationship with. And I feel like I know their hearts. But it does make me feel some sort of way seeing white men and wondering, were you there in DC? Are you a part of this? So that's how I feel, but that's something that I'll continue to work on.
How about you, Terry?
I'm with Bruce. I never looked at him any differently. I will always look at him the same way. I don't have the fear, and mainly I don't have the fear because I have a concealed carry permit, and I never leave my house without my firearm. So I never have that type of fear. But I have always, especially where I live, you have to understand, all California is not progressive. It is not all blue. It is just the largest areas that have the most people are Democratic. That is not where I live. Where I live, you will see Confederate flags. I mean, I even seen an incident from my town on Twitter that went viral of them accosting a young lady, a Hispanic young lady, white supremacist. And this was 10 minutes from where I live. And this was well before, this was during the summer. So I have always had to keep my eyes open, especially coming from law enforcement. I definitely know I have to keep my eyes open.
Right.
So it really didn't make that big of a difference because I seen it coming. I was expecting it. I live in a Republican area, a Republican county, and I know how they look at me. The first time I wore a mask, I was one of those people that before I even had to, back in last February, I was accosted by a older white man in a grocery store and says, "Oh, you must have been to China." And it's like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I have. China is going to be right here. And because of people, yes, I was accosted. And the first thing I'm thinking of doing is like, okay, let's just take a deep breath because you are armed. You do not want to overreact.
Right. And we see you on the news, right? Right.
So it's just one of those things you just have to be aware of it. It's not like I don't look side eye at everybody. I just can't because everybody is not that way. And I can't put on my beliefs onto everybody, but I have to keep my eyes open and primarily because of where I live.
Okay. All right, Gary, and let me ask you the same question.
Nothing changed for me on January the 6th. I mean, the reality is that people are people. There are going to be people that are covert about it. There's going to be people that are overt about it. I think it was somebody that said something about the challenge, maybe you, Beth, that said something about challenging yourself to not see that in everybody, though. One important thing for me as a Black man is that even though I get seen as the stereotype a lot, people see the stereotype, they assume that, I'm this character of Black man, which I'm not per se. Okay, maybe I might have been, but I'm not now. But even though a lot of times people will meet me with the stereotype, I don't want to be that same person. So at the same time, while I know it's possible, and while I know that there are, white folk out there, obviously some black folk out there that have some issues with what, and we're in total accordance with what happened on January the 6th. I have to believe when I look at this group here, and especially like Jeb and Brooks, I've talked to you guys, got to know you guys last year. I want to believe that that's not everybody. And I want to believe that the majority of the people that I see don't feel that way. But at the same time, I grew up in a rural area, then I moved to an urban area, and I know it's there. There's a lot more people um, than we think and than we know. So it's there. So nothing changed. Nothing surprised me. We saw that coming. We knew it was going to happen. Optimistically, I hope that things will change. I know that realistically, some things are never going to change.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Gary. And Michael, let me ask you briefly.
I well, I looked at my neighbors. I have one behind me that's a Trump supporter, one in front of me that's a Trump supporter, one to the left that's a Trump supporter, and the lady to the right is a Biden supporter. So it didn't surprise me, and I just look at them the same way that I always looked at them. You know, I try to treat people the way I want to be treated. Period. I'm going to keep doing things that way, and I'm going to stay optimistic that we'll get through this too.
Okay, great. All right. One final question for everyone as we get ready to wrap up here. Let's talk about this COVID-19 because now there's a new variant out there. It's supposed to be even more deadly than the one that we're already going through. Have you taken the vaccine yet? Are you going to take the vaccine when offered? Amanda. And you have a little boy too and a husband. So is this a family decision that you all are going to make? Are you taking it? Have you taken it?
Well, it's not time for me to get the vaccine because I'm not in the group that would be qualified to get it. But currently, my sister and my brother-in-law and my niece have COVID-19, and my brother-in-law's been kind of, I don't know, he's kind of had a rough patch of it. My niece actually works for a pharmacy. She did take the first dose of the vaccine, but she still, of course, it's not 95% effective until the second dose, but she did get COVID-19 after having the first dose. So it doesn't mean that you can't, it takes both doses before it can become effective. Um, I'm still kind of like putting my feelers out there, but I mean, my mom watches my little boy and she's, um, close to 70. So, she helps watch him, for us. Um, so I, I'm still on the fence, but I think I probably will get the vaccine because depending on, like what I see out there before it becomes my time to get it, because I feel like that would offer, I guess, in my point of view, what I've seen about it, more protection for like my mom and my little boy. And my little boy has allergies, so I kind of want to keep them protected. But yeah, my niece had the first dose though. But like I said, she had probably been in her system for about a week, and she had COVID-19. So it's just it's still scary, and then the new variant out there is kind of an unknown. So
Right.
I think I probably will, but like I said, I'm still watching to see what goes on before it gets my turn.
Okay, thank you. Jean, have you taken the vaccine yet?
I can't wait. I keep refreshing on my phone and on my computer to get it. And of course, it's sold out. It's been given, but I can't wait. I will just say to the question about you all seeing us differently, that is a really sad thing that one group of people could cause another group of people to see the rest of us differently. When I went to the Women's March 4 years ago, which is what I was thinking of this week, and that was one of the biggest things I've ever been a part of. It was so exciting. My sign said, "You don't represent us." And those people do not represent white America. They represent a portion of white America, but they don't represent us. And I'm grateful to hear that many of you will be remembering that. They don't represent us.
Okay, Jean, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Brooks, are you going to be getting the vaccine?
Absolutely. The second it's available, even if I have to get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, I will be boom right there. It's going to be summertime before, I'm 62. I don't take care of older people, so I'm way down on the list. And there are a lot of people who need it before I get it. But absolutely, I look forward to it. And I encourage everyone who hesitates to go ahead and get it. It's
What about you,
the
Bruce?
only hope we have.
Oh, okay. All right. I agree. Well, okay. I'm going to say, okay. Bruce, what are you? Are you going to get it?
Not until they reach the 2.0 stage. Right now, the vaccine to me is 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. In other words, there's 3 different types out there, and they're in their early stages. I look at the vaccine like software. Software doesn't work with 1.0, 1.2, 1.3. When they get into the second versions and higher versions, they've tested it, they've played around with it. I have pre-existing conditions. I'm 62. I am not introducing something into my body until I know how it affects the conditions that I have. They haven't had enough time to do that research. So I'm very vulnerable because I teach in a public school. Last week, 250 kids were sent home for exposure. I wear a shield, double mask, everything. I'm doing everything I can, but in the state of Florida, schools never shut down. We are operational. So the vaccine for me, I'm gonna give them more time. Everybody that wants it, great. That'll help you get better so you don't mess with my system. But I'm not introducing that into my body until they've got more tests, more studies, more research to see how it responds to people with the existing conditions that I have. It's that simple. And because of my wife at home, we're already isolated in the house already. Because
Right.
of that, because I work in a public school system and I'm exposed pretty much every day, we do not spend time in the same space often. And if I interact with her, I'm wearing a mask.
Right.
She cooks in the kitchen, I stay out until she's done. And then when I go in, I'm making sure that everything is sanitized. So
Right.
we've changed our whole entire household because of it.
All right. Thanks, Bruce. What about you, Terry? Are you getting the vaccine?
I absolutely am as soon as it becomes available. I lost 4 family members to COVID in the last 4 months, almost lost 4 others. I have underlying health conditions. It is no way, even with my underlying health conditions, it is no way I'm willing to risk it. So as soon as it becomes available, I'll take it. It doesn't matter which one, doesn't matter which. I would rather have it than not have it. I'm in California, and if you've seen the numbers of what we're dealing with, the only hesitancy I have is the variants that's come out of this on whether or not it will be effective towards that. But because I'll rather risk that than risk what the horror and devastation that I have gone through behind this disease.
Yeah, I hear you. I think we all know someone who, or many of us know someone who has succumbed as a result of COVID. Gary, are you getting it?
Probably. I think I'm like in the middle here because I do have some apprehensions. There's some things that do scare me, and the fact that we don't really know, how well it's going to work. But there's the other part of me that I do have some pre-existing conditions, and my wife does. So, I'm a therapist, and if I got to go back into the office to do the work that I do, I've been working from home, but if I got to go back into the office, I'm going to have a higher rate of being exposed. So at this point, I'm leaning towards when the availability comes my way, probably will take it.
Okay, Mike, you take
Well,
it?
I think that I will take it because my doctor has recommended that I take it because of underlying health conditions. So I think I will take it when my time comes.
So Operation Warp Speed doesn't bother you at all?
Operation Warp Speed uh, was um, was a lie. So yeah, that bothered me. Operation Warp Speed. Well, anything that they did, it bothered me because I felt like it was disingenuous. It was a lie. So I
All right.
felt like we lived through 4 years of straight lies
All right.
about everything. I basically feel that we were robbed for 4 years. Taxpayers were robbed for 4 years.
Okay. Melody, are you going to take the vaccine?
I am on the fence. Um, I work in clinical research. Um, I, I understand what Bruce is saying. I want to see more data. And the reason why I'm on the fence is because I'm a parent. If I didn't have kids, then I would go ahead and not have any reservations. However, I just started working for a new company and I just received the notification that I am able to go and get the vaccine. And if I have to start traveling for work, I may end up going ahead and getting it, hoping that it will be more protection against getting COVID 19 versus the risk of getting the vaccine. So I understand the hesitations that people have, but I also appreciate those who are willing to go ahead and get the vaccination because we do need that research and data. And it's going to be a while. It's going to be years before we really know what the effects of the vaccine or COVID 19 is on everyone. So,
And Jed?
Yeah, 2 points. First is after 400 years of injustice, I mean, I hate the fact that Black people that I meet and see are wary of me at first, but you'd be crazy not to be. Okay, I don't blame y'all for being wary of white people. You know, you'd be crazy not to be after the history. First of all, so I hate it, but that's exactly the smartest thing you can do is be wary. And I'm sorry, but that's just the truth of the matter. On COVID, I'm communications chair, as most of you know, for the county NAACP, and one of our immediate priority right now is to get information out there so people can make this decision for themselves. And for the last 4 or 5 days, all I've done is look at study after study after study. I looked at the trials. 40,000 people were involved in the various trials. At least 10% by definition had to be people of color. That had to include people with diabetes and sickle cell. So they made a very, very conscious effort to make sure that the variances in the Black community particularly were addressed during the trial so that they could safely recommend it. So I'm trying to get that word out. If any of you have questions or interested in any of those articles, Transylvania County NAACP is my site, is my Facebook, and go on there, please. There's just a ton of articles with a lot of data. Now, again, as Melody said, long term, you can't know too far in advance, although you do a lot of computer analysis and that kind of thing. They have a pretty good idea that the long term, this is not going to be any more harmful than a flu shot. And they have taken a lot of care, as I say, to test and make sure people of color were involved in the test protocols. So yes, I'm going to get it as soon as I can. I'm 62, like Bruce and Brooks, and I do have, as you can hear, an underlying health condition with my lungs. And as soon as my slot comes up, I'm going to make that appointment and get it.
All
I would
right.
like to
Well,
add one thing.
yes.
if I could, real quickly.
Please.
To reinforce what Bruce said, is that there are people who cannot get of any vaccine for whatever reason. And if your underlying health conditions take you out of that pool, then that is absolutely has to be respected. And it is more reason for people who can get the vaccine to get it, not just to protect me, but to protect Bruce, who might not be able to get the vaccine. So that's a crucial point. I'm glad he brought that up.
And the thing is that I've never taken a flu shot. I travel a lot as well. I will get it, but I have to make sure first before I go out in there, because again, I'm exposed already. And I've unfortunately, a lot of folks that have died this past year that I know personally. I worked with a guy on Thanksgiving Day doing college basketball, and 3 weeks later he died. Well, we all had to test several times before we got into these, TV trucks and production events. He was negative. So what happened in a 3-week span where he's 40 something and he's gone?
I will have to say that my niece that got the first part of the vaccine, her symptoms have been kind of milder compared to my sister and my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law has actually kind of had it worse than they both have, but partly I wonder if it's because I don't know some of his conditions that he has, but I will say that it was a little bit milder for my niece with having the first part of the vaccine.
Okay. Well, hopefully by this time next month, some of us will have gotten the vaccine, and others will, I guess, still be in line. I am still out. As the jury is still out. I have some very serious underlying conditions, and I'm just not sure as to what I want to do. I didn't take the shingle shot. I've never taken the flu shot in like 30 years. So I'm not sure about this one. But anyway, okay. That's it. That's going to do it for this edition of our conversation on racism in America. And you know what? Next month is Valentine's Day, and we're going to be talking about love next month. So for those of you who want to participate, come up with your love quotes, come up with some information, inspiration about how we can create more love in the world and with each other. So that's going to be it for next month. I just want to give you that heads up. So anybody tuning in can say, oh, I want to know about that. All right, guys. Thank you so much once again for the conversation. As always, I sincerely enjoyed it. I think that this is great as we continue to try to heal amongst ourselves, because it really just begins with us. And then we can go out and spread it to others. And that's hopefully what we're doing. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Beverly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Okay.
Good news you can use for your life. If you want to get the info that'll help you throughout your life. Yeah.